do you think it's important to know what your attachment style is and your partner's attachment style, and they know also, to be able to have a really good relationship and thrive?
I think the more you learn about yourself, and this is the thing too, I mean, I work predominantly with women and like the self-empowerment space, and I love helping women to empower themselves with the right tools. And that means not only relationships, but also self-love and knowing their worth and understanding their past and healing from it. So the more you have self-awareness of what your patterns are and what your attachment style is, the better and the more authentic you can show up in your relationship and in the dating process as well.
Welcome to GlowLab. We're going to have a lot of fun and learn a lot together. Whenever I'm on social media, and I think this might be because I am now a single woman and I'm dating and everything, I am bombarded in my algorithm with all this dating advice. And I feel like I'm learning all about things like what kind of attachment style you have, whether you should be in your black cat energy, and just ways that you should be working with men. And it all just seems confusing and exhausting. And it doesn't feel like you can get a true, authentic relationship by just taking this advice. So for today's episode, I decided to bring on Jenny Meinen, who is a psychologist and also a coach who works with women specifically to level up their mindset and also to work on their relationships so that they thrive. Because guess what? It's not just about sex and physical intimacy. We also need to know ourselves and show up in our most authentic way. All right, Jenny, we talk a lot about relationships, mostly sex, on this podcast whenever we have experts like you on, but there are other aspects of relationships that are also really important to make it thrive. So I'm excited to have you on because we're going to talk about that today, right?
Yes, we are. Thank you for having me today. I'm really excited.
Yeah, me too. So tell us a little bit about your background first before we get into it.
So I am originally from Germany. So I'm a German psychologist, and that's where I started my studies as well. I always was very passionate about relationships. So I really focused studying on relationships in terms of attachment theory. I actually did a second master's in marriage and family therapy when I moved to the States in Southern California, and focused on attachment theory as well because I find it really interesting and how to see that we all have basically an emotional blueprint, and that is determined by our attachment. And our attachment is determined by how we learn to give and receive love growing up. So I always found that very interesting. And when I moved here, I started to incorporate coaching as well. So I'm a coach as well because I found it really interesting to see the aspects of therapy being combined with coaching that focus more in the present moment. So when we're in the therapy aspect, we focus more on seeing what are the old patterns, how did I learn to give and receive love, what are ways that I define myself, and what is my self-concept ultimately. And when we bring coaching into it, it's really great because you have more actionable steps that help you to lead to be more independent when it comes to growth and changing yourself.
I really love this whole attachment style. I didn't really know much about it until TikTok, honestly. I feel like now I hear about this all the time. There's like the avoidance, the fearful avoidant, the anxious attached person. Will you explain this concept to people?
Absolutely. So we all have an attachment style. Mm-hmm. And for the ease of it, we're going to just talk about the three main attachment styles. So we have a secure attachment style, which means we are happily and safely attached to a person. We don't worry if their love is given or not, and it allows us to have a healthy relationship. When we are anxiously attached, we are more worried. And actually, it's predominant in women. So there's studies where it's 75% women and a lot of studies that were conducted. But there's also males that are anxiously attached. And when we have a predominantly anxious attachment, what happens is that we are not sure if the love that we want or need is going to be provided. And that shows up in a way of being, let's say, in a modern relationship. Are they texting back? If they are going out with their friends and not inviting me, are they forgetting about me? Are they still going to love me? They're always worried if they're being loved and they need more reassurance. When we talk about an avoidant attachment style, the origin, ironically, is also not knowing if you're going to be provided with the love that you need. It's predominantly in males, but also in women. I've also myself had more, when I was younger, an avoidantly attachment style. And what's interesting here is, though, instead of trying to reassure that you are being loved by having more behaviors that are reassuring, you move away because it feels more safe to have the distance to someone versus trying to seek it, right? So they find more comfort in being more distant versus trying to seek it. And the fourth attachment style is a disorganized attachment style that can also be a mixture of anxious and avoidant. That's often attachment style that is developed when someone was in abusive households growing up, where there's a lot of back and forth, right? One moment they really crave closeness, and the other moment they really want the distance. It's like a lot of the push-pull. But a lot of people think, oh, that must be me because I feel both. But in most cases, you do have an anxious or avoidant attachment style predominantly. And then that shows up a little different than when you have a disorganized attachment style.
So how can a person know what their attachment style is? Because I mean, I've even tried to like say, oh, I'm an avoidant, but then I see some of these things and I'm like, oh, I'm maybe not that like intense. Maybe when I was younger, but maybe I've like matured and grown past a lot of these things or something. Yeah. And I mean, I was able to be in a marriage for a really long time.
Yeah.
So like, you know, that kind of thing. But so then sometimes it's like you said, like you can sometimes hear these, I guess, traits of a certain type of attachment style and think that you fit into this. So how do you figure it out for yourself and then maybe for somebody you're dating?
Oh my God. So it's really interesting. I, in the past, have asked men on dates what their attachment style is, and let me tell you, like, they always lie. It's insane.
Amongst other things. But I've hardly ever met a man that didn't end up not being healthily attached, not, you know, giving me a spiel or something about what their attachment style is. So I stopped asking that at one point because I was like, okay, if they know the terminology, they're going to just try to, you know, weasel their way around portraying something. And I think a good way to find out how and what your attachment style is, first of all, there's attachment style tests online. You can literally just Google or ask ChatGPT, which, you know, is also my bestie. I love using ChatGPT. We all do, yeah.
Can definitely ask, and you can get targeted questions. Working with a therapist can be incredibly helpful when you have someone that can see and like create patterns around the behaviors that you have or the problems that are recurring in your relationship. And one thing that you can start with is by asking yourself, when I show up in a relationship and I fear they're pulling away, or I feel like I'm not sure where they're at, what is my initiate response? Do I seek distance? Am I trying to move away and be like, oh my God, like, no, this is too much. Let's say you're avoidant and things get intimate. Like things can be going well and we all had that, right? Like everything feels so good in the beginning. So let's say you're getting to know someone and in the beginning, there are no stakes. You don't know that person.
Yep.
So it feels emotionally safe for an avoidant to be all lovey-dovey, to be like, oh my God, you're the best. And let's do this all. And you make all these plans because it doesn't feel real at that point, right? You don't know that person yet. It's called creating fake intimacy. Then when things get real, and there's this classic, talking about TikTok, you know, there's so many videos around, oh, like the moment you say, I like you too, they're like, whoa, wait a minute, 1 second, like what's happening here? You know, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
And that's the moment when real intimacy, connection, and commitment comes in, that they get afraid. So an avoidant person in that situation would get afraid. They would be like, oh my God, like closeness is suffocating me. I don't feel safe. Being close with someone is not safe because usually there's a subconscious belief that, oh my God, if people get close, they're going to end up not liking me, or we're going to push each other away, or no matter what the motive is, they don't think that closeness equals safety. So they're going to do their best to sabotage it by, you know, seeking distance and not being too emotionally involved and, you know, not trying to depend on someone. Versus someone who's anxious will do the opposite. And the sad part too is that it often ends up being a self-fulfilling prophecy as well, because the anxious person will do everything to try to secure commitment or closeness. And if they're not seeing things being mirrored to them the way they want it, so let's say to finding out which type you are, let's say you're like, oh my God, I'm trying to almost people please. I'm trying to like show them how amazing I am. I'm trying to show them how irreplaceable I am, right? So they're doing this overtime work to prove their worthiness almost. And in a lot of cases, that is kind of off-putting for someone who is, let's say, for example, securely attached, and someone who is avoidant. So there's something that's called, we can talk about this later too, called a push-pull dynamic.
Yeah.
That's why you often see anxious and avoidant people finding each other like magnets.
Yeah.
So what happens then is it's off-putting to someone who's secure or even avoidant, right? So they're like, oh my God, they're like trying too hard to get this closeness, or they're trying to rush things. Like, what's wrong with them? So then these underlying beliefs of, oh, they don't really like me or love me or whatever that is, end up, feeling true to them because the other person is seeking some distance, may that be healthy or unhealthy distance, right? Mm-hmm. And so the anxious would be someone who finds themselves often trying to reassure them that they're part of things, that they are being loved, that they're seeking closeness in that way.
Interesting. And then a securely attached person, does that even exist?
That does exist.
Okay.
There are definitely a lot of also securely attached people. Interesting enough, again, often secure and secure find each other more often than anxious or avoidant, because a secure person will get just sick and tired of these games, right? They'll be like, okay, what the heck is happening? And they're realizing a pattern, so it doesn't pan out often. However, there's also securely attached people that put in the work with someone who's insecurely attached. What the thing is, when people are securely attached, they feel they have a higher sense of being lovable, generally speaking. So let's say someone not inviting them to something because they're out with a certain type of friends, or they're boys or they're girls, they won't take it personal. They'll be like, oh my God, she's having a great time with her girls, versus someone who's anxiously attached with them, like, oh, like they're probably out there, trying to meet boys, or trying to, like, why am I not invited? Like, if it wouldn't be shady, he would have asked me, right? So a secure response would be more, oh, okay, so interesting. They're going out there having fun. They're not thinking anything about it. They feel loved, and they don't feel that they have to, like, reassure it all the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So do you think it's important to know what your attachment style is and your partner's attachment style, and they know also, to be able to have a really good relationship and thrive?
I absolutely believe that.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think the more you learn about yourself, and this is the thing too, I mean, I work predominantly with women and like the self-empowerment space, and I love helping women to empower themselves with the right tools. And that means not only relationships, but also self-love and knowing their worth and understanding their past and healing from it. So the more you have self-awareness of what your patterns are and what your attachment style is, the better and the more authentic you can show up in your relationship and in the dating process as well. Because if you don't know, why am I always reacting that way? Why am I always attracting guys that are, like all in, and then everything goes downhill? Or why am I always attracted to fuckboys or guys that, have certain qualities that don't give me the healthy love that I deserve and that I crave? And these patterns stem from your attachment style, right? It stems from the belief that you have about yourself, how you receive love, and what you think how you can show up. So we choose our partners based on our attachment style. And so ultimately knowing your attachment style will help you have a healthier, happier, long-term partnership.
Okay, wait, let's diagnose me. I'd say I'm a securely attached person, but one trait that I have noticed about myself, and I think this is actually really common with women, especially, like some women call it like the ick, or like they just like move on really quickly. I've noticed that I have a very short fuse when it comes to what I tolerate. So like, even if I'm with somebody who's like showing me that overall they care, right? Like they do a lot of the work, but then they have one mess up, I'm kind of like, well, fuck that, I'm done. Like, I'm so over this.
Should we get into that a little?
Let's do it. That's common, right?
Yeah. So, and what's interesting here too, what I would ask myself in your situation is, what was the standard that I grew up with my parents? Did they expect me to be perfect? Did they believe, oh, if I messed up, did I have this ingrained belief that if I mess up, I'm not lovable, right? So believing I have the standard to myself, I have to be perfect. I have to, have my shit together. I have to be on. Like, this would never happen to me, right?
Yeah.
What would happen if that happens to you, right? Would you get in trouble? Would that mean, did you get more love and praise if you were always really good?
Yeah.
And now you're projecting that expectation onto your partner.
You know what? Well, you just like nailed my childhood. I grew up with a Korean mom. So like, Korean mom is like, even if I like crushed something, like I did the best at something, she'd still find one thing that she'd be like, you could have done this part better. Yeah. And so then I'd like work really hard to make it perfect and then get that praise for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So that makes sense, right?
Hilarious.
Yeah. But see, like, that's interesting, right? So you're projecting like that. And it's so similar. I had that when I was younger. I remember, I think I was 21 or so, and I had a partner, and he would always like laze around the house and sleep in, and on the weekends, and it would drive me crazy, right? I would just be like, why are you still laying around? Like, and it's like, what's wrong with you? It's the weekend. I can do whatever I want. And that was when I, started to get into psychology and doing my degrees and like understanding like projection in terms of, I realized that from my father, like in the mornings, I got kicked out of bed. Yeah. It was like, I can't lay around. I can't laze. Like I would always pretend almost I'm doing something if I had my parent walk in, so that I'm busy, that it seems like I'm doing something. I'm being productive, right? Like being in the doing energy. And I projected that onto my partner. I was like, oh, because if I'm not allowed to laze around and not be productive, because again, that equals something about my worth and who I am. I'm defining myself over doing. He's not allowed to do that either.
Yeah. Wait, do you see this as a common thing amongst career-driven women, ambitious women?
Oh my God, yes. Big time. I talk a lot about this on my podcast too, where we talk about like feminine energy and masculine energy and women that are highly driven and successful. It's such an interesting concept, because I think a lot of women that are used to being career-driven, doing their own thing and being successful and have a high standard upon themselves, they had to learn growing up to do things themselves. And that like in return makes it hard for them sometimes to soften up in their feminine energy in dating, because they have to be in the masculine. They always had to in order to survive, in order they had to take care of their siblings. They maybe had to take care of themselves. They had to make sure like they are an active, again, doing part in order to have their needs met. So what I mean by that is, often, as you said, career-driven women, they're used to like doing and taking the lead, and sometimes that can make it hard because we put a very interesting standard and expectation onto a partner and onto men, right? We can't be like, oh, I want a man that leads. I want a man in this masculine energy. Like I like to take a seat back because I have so much agency and control and things I have to do in my business and in my day-to-day that I love relaxing into my feminine in a relationship. But that also means you have to do that active part in the work of what does that mean to relax? And for example, let a man make a mistake here and there versus like, oh my God, getting the ick. Being like, why is he doing that wrong? What, like getting in our head about all those things.
It's funny. I'm going to confess something. So when I first became single, I'm like recently going through a divorce. And when I first became single, I decided to join dating apps, and my profile, I kept it really simple. And all I said in my description about me was, you're in charge. Because I was like, I just don't want to have to think about this. Yeah. But I think you're bringing something up, and this is totally me that I've come to realize in that situation is I have a really hard time settling into my feminine energy. Yeah. Because I am always in my masculine energy, and I'm always trying to control things, always running things, always know, I can't sit around waiting for somebody to make a decision, especially if he's just so chill about things, right? Like I have a schedule, I have kids, I have to I travel for work, do all these things. So if a guy isn't scheduled with me, then I can't handle this, right? Yeah. So I realized quickly that being in letting somebody else be in charge feels nearly impossible to me, because if I don't take matters into my own hands, then it's not going to work out. Yeah.
It's so funny, huh? How that works out, and how this is the difference between when we work with our subconscious and our conscious mind, right? Your conscious mind says, of course, take the lead, lead me, baby.
Yeah. Lead me, baby.
Lead me, baby. Show me the way. I love it. Oh, there's nothing better than, right? Like a masculine man who's still in touch with his emotions and leads. But then you still have a programming that you've had for decades probably on how to operate and how you show up, and especially your energetic blueprint, right? You can say whatever you want. Like your energy is going to speak for itself. Yeah. And there lays the inner work, right? To see am I showing up as that type of woman that is attracting that type of man? Where could I tap more into the feminine, the energetic parts within me that soften up, that let someone lead, that trust? I think one of our biggest challenges as women are to trust a man. And it's so hard sometimes to trust a man because
they're not as smart as us.
They'd be like, They don't be trustworthy sometimes, you know? And it's so hard if you put all your trust into a man and you've been like heavily disappointed, and like rebuilding that trust takes just a whole nother level of inner work and healing and patience and self-reflection.
It's totally true. So what would be feminine energy? Because you're talking about how we probably need to settle into our feminine energy to have a good relationship, right?
Yes, that's right.
If we're going to be with a man.
Exactly. And you know what? Here, I do want to say a disclaimer, because not every classic feminine and masculine energy has to be present in order for a relationship to be healthy and happy. I've seen women that work really well when they are in their masculine energy, and when they have a man that leads with their feminine energy. Now, I know no one wants to hear that, but I mean, look around you for all the listeners. You will all know that couple where woman earns more. You're like, she's wearing the pants, she's calling the shots, and and he's more doormat, and it kind of works for them. Right. So I want to preface that with the fact that sometimes it works for a couple. If we're talking about the classic dynamic, always depends what you want. And assuming that's what we are leading as well, when you're in your feminine energy, you are more in your receiving energy. That's one of the biggest differences. So masculine energy is doing, feminine energy is receiving and being. I love the analogy of a river. You can think of the river bank being the masculine energy, and the water, the flowy part, is the feminine energy, right? And the masculine energy gives or this is a good example too. The melody is the feminine energy, and the drum beat and everything is the masculine energy. While the masculine energy gives structure, the feminine still can be, in flow, but being led by it, versus I have to take control. Versus I have to know what the outcome is, right? That's the biggest challenge when we're trying to soften into our feminine energy, is learning how to let go of control and trusting, right? Like really trusting that the outcome, no matter what it is for your highest good, is going to turn out just fine, because you can trust that you are being taken care of.
Okay, so then what's the difference between, going back to like TikTok analogies and things the topics that we hear online, what about black cat energy?
Ooh. I love that term, and I know she's a fellow German girlie as well. I've seen her page that she talks a lot about the black cat and the golden retriever energy.
Yeah.
Black cat energy ultimately means that a woman knows her worth. A woman loves herself and she prioritizes her needs and sticks to her boundaries. Versus when a woman is in her golden retriever energy, she would be more accommodating towards the man. The man is more the star and the highlight and, the middle point of the relationship. She dims her light a little more. She's more focused on what his needs are. She moves with his career, right? She's more focused on, being, I almost want to say submissive, and it sounds bad, so I want to be careful with the words I'm using. But truly, the black cat energy is more self-assured, more confident, more knowing that she's the prize. Again, classic feminine energy. And the golden retriever part, the man will be more, he adores her, he cherishes her, he values her and respects her boundaries, right? It's more, he knows she's the queen and he loves taking care of her as the queen.
Got it. Okay. So can there be a little bit of a balance of this though? Because this seems exhausting.
Right?
It's geez, I have to always be like in my black cat energy and always, in my feminine energy. Can it kind of bounce back and forth between a couple?
First of all, I love that you're saying that, because I agree. There's so many TikTok terminologies and trends. And I'm going to say something. I'm so sick of people telling women always how to be and who to be and how to act. Like, why does it always have to be on a woman, like accommodating and creating her life around what a man wants, what's attractive, like, right? Like,
exactly.
If you're in XYZ, it's attractive to a man. If you're that type of one, it's attractive to a man. I find it so exhausting. Like, aren't we in 2025 where it's less about the man, and like you when you're wearing this color, that's going to be attractive to men. So I'm sometimes a little, and in my content too, I don't talk a lot about do this to be more attractive and to come across a certain way and to have people or men specifically to like you more. I'm just a little sick of it,
Yeah.
And it's always about, it feels like we're in this rat race of auditioning for the role of a wife.
Yeah.
For eternity. And I have 3 degrees, right? I have 2 masters in psychology, and like someone always was like, oh my God, that would be so amazing when it, like you'll come across so smart. And that's so great because it makes you wifey material and everything. I was like, wait a second, I'm not educating myself. So I can be someone's educated wife.
Yeah.
Like, can I also, be a woman who is, as you said, and we'll circle back to that, in her feminine energy, but also wants to build an empire.
Yeah.
And makes mistakes. And sometimes is maybe, like, it could be like knowing exact structure and knowing where to go, right? Because sometimes I'm like you, being like, oh, I see something, I'll overview it. I sometimes might catch up and quicker than someone else. And I don't want to, sit in the car. It's so funny. An example, I had someone who was just, with the driving, it just gave me so much grief. Just a horrible driver. And the problem was he would just miss exits. And someone was like, once like, well, let him do it. Don't always mother him or correct him. And I mean, at that point, I was like, okay, this can be an actual deal breaker, because like the 12th time in a couple of weeks to not missing an exit, I'm just like, just sitting here and pretending I'm in my feminine energy and letting the man do the mistake. Mm-hmm. I have to say something, right?
Yeah.
And I think that brings you back to the point that you said about it being exhausting, embodying black cat, feminine energy, etc. I think the most important part is being authentic. And like in my content and my podcast too, I talk a lot about just how to become your most authentic self. And I think what can help is when you know these concepts and you resonate with them, right? Like think of it more as take what you need versus it being a rule book. This is how you're in your feminine energy. This is how you're the black cat. You can never let him do XYZ. I think it's less about following strict rules, but ultimately knowing this is about knowing my worth. This is about loving myself and respecting myself. And that can be within the boundaries of concepts that can help us. But if it's unhelpful for us or it doesn't resonate with us, just leave it.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Well, okay, so then let's kind of talk about when you're getting into a relationship or you're dating, what are some traits or things that people should be keeping in mind to find these? Not that we're trying to find a relationship, but we kind of are, right? Like that kind of thing, right? So what is it that people should be thinking about to be able to successfully find themselves in a relationship?
I think thinking about a partner, first of all, as the cherry on top and an amazing addition to your life is key. I like the saying that if you're happy single, you're going to be happy in a relationship. If you think that your whole purpose is going to change and all your wishes and dreams are going to come true once you're in a relationship, once, right? You're putting so much pressure on your partner and the partnership itself that it makes it so challenging to bloom into it. And I think keeping in mind that you have your whole set of personality traits and your history and everything that you're bringing in, the other person as well. So you have two completely different histories, traumas and experiences, and keeping in mind that in this process, you're staying self-aware and true to yourself, but you are really committed to understanding one another, to when conflict comes up, to see it's us against the problem, to understand, like, that's one of my favorite things to reframe it too, is saying, when you have conflict coming up and things are arising, to see, can we understand each other and can we have a good repair? Because it's not the conflict itself that destroys couples, right? A lot of people say, we've been fighting so much. It's more so how you're showing up in the repair phase of the conflict, right, afterwards. And I think, like, bringing the utmost understanding that we all have different histories and past, but we are here to love one another and understand each other is one of the best things that you can do for yourself when you're going into a relationship.
Interesting. So you kind of make me think about this thing. People talk about twin flames, soulmates. Do you believe in that stuff? Or is that bullshit? And it's more about the work.
Ooh, oh my God, that's an interesting question. So here's the thing. First of all, I think twin flames are toxic. I think trauma bonds can be misunderstood as twin flames. I don't think there's anything wrong. I'm sure there's people, and I know that leans more into the spiritual realm of people saying, like, I do think we meet people for a purpose, but I do think we meet people for a reason, for a season, or for a lifetime. And maybe often we're not meant to end up with our twin flame, but it just showed us where our wounds are, or how deeply we can love, or what is really missing within us, right? So it doesn't mean if you missed out on your twin flame that you're not with the love of your life. I don't think that. I do think we have soulmates, and I love the idea though that we have multiple soulmates. I don't think it is only limited to romantic partners even. Like sometimes you meet friendships or have friendships that just feel like soulmate friendships where you just so deeply aligned and you just feel so like this is meant to be in my life. So I do believe we can have that. What comes to it, I think the problem is when we think we found our soulmate and we don't have to do the work, as you just said. I do think having the self-awareness and the willingness to work on a relationship together, if you know that you're meant to be together and you're a solid team, I think that's where the work comes in, and you can't just rely on the fact on good sexual chemistry or just thinking you're just soulmates. You need to also be aware of the fact that you still have needs and wants and are going to have different opinions on things.
So what would be some tips for people that are pursuing a relationship right now?
I think when it comes to having a better relationship and understanding each other, one reframe that I love is asking yourself when you're being irritated or upset at your partner is, what is the story that I'm telling myself? When I used to work in couples therapy, and I did a couple of years where I just had a lot of deep work with couples and understanding one another, one of my favorite reframe homeworks is when distress comes up and you're feeling like your partner is the enemy, to pause and say, the story that I'm telling myself right now is fill in the blank. It helps you to understand the story behind something. So let's say your partner is coming to dinner late the third time this week. Obviously, we'll be pissed.
Yeah.
They're coming home late, but I mean, and you've done a homemade meal and you've put in all the effort and you're sitting there and you're getting so upset. And let's say you were supposed to have plans on the weekend and you cancel them because you're upset. I would want to encourage someone who's experienced that frustration is, what is the story I'm telling myself right now? Let's say it's a he. He's not respecting my time. He doesn't love me. He clearly, if he would care enough, he would have come home to me, right? I'm making up a story about how much he loves me by the fact that he's late for dinner. So that helps me to when he comes home, let's say, and I'm saying like, hey, instead of being just pissed, upset, not having sex with him, ignoring him for days, and like having, again, like this conflict that's arising, to say, I noticed that when you come late and while we discussed to have a certain time, you dinner at a certain time, and I made a meal, that when you don't show up, it really makes me feel like you don't prioritize our relationship or my needs. And it makes me feel like you don't love me the way you've loved me 5 years ago. Right? So that opens up a way different ground for communication. It opens up the ground where you can, instead of him being defensive, because if you're like, you're such an asshole, like, I'm fucking never doing this again, like, goodbye.
Yeah.
Which I understand where that impulse is coming from.
We've all been there, right?
We've all been there. We've all done it. For him to soften up. He doesn't have to, like, how is he going to get defensive, right? Like, unless we're talking about a toxic relationship and unhealthy patterns, but that should soften up, being like, my God, you're right. We have this deal this week and I should have communicated how important it is for me to have this deal done by Friday. My boss told me whoever finishes this deal gets the promotion. And I've been really working relentlessly, and this has been just the worst week. And I totally blanked on telling you how important this actually is for me. Right? And then she could say, my God, like, she would have told me. Like, that makes so much sense. Of course I want you to be happy in your career and get that promotion. Now you get the chance to repair, versus the other route would be, right, like petty and not talking to each other and just going hard on, like, you don't respect me, like, I'm never doing this again. And another thing I love too is when someone comes home, taking 30 seconds for a hug. Like, it lets your oxytocin flow through you and, bring all the love hormones up. Just having 30 seconds really where you're just hugging your partner or kissing them or taking a moment to be present and conscious, versus like, oh my God, hi, mwah, and then you're back on your phone or back to your task. So really taking that time to like create and build intimacy with your partner is great. And I think when you're having conflict too, to physically unite first or holding each other's hands while talking can really soften up, being less defensive.
Yeah, I guess that makes so much sense. So I guess to kind of wrap up the conversation, since we were originally supposed to talk about how to make a relationship thrive, what are some really quick pointers for people that are in relationships to make their relationships thrive?
I think the most important thing when it comes to thriving and having healthy relationships is being vulnerable. What we talked about earlier is so important. How you approach conflict, how you approach everything with vulnerability will change the way you show up and the way you bond in a relationship. Having a better relationship is also defined by being able to have more quality time with each other. And what helps is when you're just compatible. If you have a similar lifestyle, I think it is helpful because it comes more natural to plan and do things with one another. If you both like to play tennis, or the vacation types you like to do is hiking or just hanging out at the beach or having game nights with friends, it comes more natural to do things that help you just have fun together. I think another thing is like planning a date night once a week, even if you've been together for 5 years, even if you have kids. I know it's significantly harder, but maybe you can find, a babysitter or a parent. And if you don't have a babysitter or a parent, find a friend that's also married and say, hey, on Thursdays, you take the kids. On Wednesdays, I take the kids. And then you both get to have a date night with your partner. And just having like these deeper conversations around how can we connect better are really helpful. Lastly, I think one of my favorite tools is having a weekly check-in. Some people think it sounds too structured, but I've seen couples really thrive when they have a weekly check-in on the weekends. Let's say they have a dinner. Super important. Phone has to be off limits, no electronics, right? Just the two of you. Find some time, even if it's after dinner, if you have dinner with your kids. How was your week? What do you need more of? What is it that you're missing? How can I love you better next week? Right? So really seeing like, oh my God, like if you could support me with preparing the meals after I drop off the kids at ballet, that would be awesome. Right? Or last time, after we had sex and it felt so rushed and, you went off to play soccer and it really irritated me. I'd love it if, we could just have 10 minutes where we hold each other and are together. Like what are the needs that you can bring up and discuss with your partner versus harboring resentment over time and then it just all coming out at once.
Yeah. I mean, the harboring resentment and not just your I guess, romantic relationships, but in life, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Generally.
It can really hurt it can really hurt
all your relationships and your friendships and your family. Exactly. And also with yourself.
Yeah.
Like being honest with yourself. Doing that check-in with yourself, by the way, is super powerful too.
That makes complete sense. Well, thank you so much. This was such a lovely conversation. I feel like I'm going to be a better person in my romantic relationships, maybe even my friendships now.
I love that. This was such a good conversation.
Yeah. Thank you. Where can people find you?
You can find me under Jenny Meinen on Instagram. That's JennyMeinen. Same name on YouTube. I also have a podcast. It's called Jenny from the Pod. I know. And you'll find that as well on Spotify and Apple.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So much fun.
You're so welcome. It's a great conversation.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of GlowLab. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you follow, rate, and also share it with a friend because we want to keep this show going. I'll talk to you next time.